Joel, would you mind moving that chair? It's messing with my whatever. I don't know whose that is either. Is that one of y'all's backpacks? I know, it's like a funeral home in here. Just talk amongst yourselves. This ain't church. You can talk, okay? There's some chairs right here. They can move over here if they feel weird about that. There's some stuff right here. We can get one more chair. We can get another chair if we need to. There's one right there. This is somebody else's, I guess. This is. That's right.
Y'all ready? Yes. Oh, that was really just support. Are y'all ready?
I guess.
Welcome to FGCU Storytelling. I'm Dr. Joel, and I am so excited to have you all here in the audience. How many of you are first time to a storytelling event? Oh, there are a few. Wow. Thank you. And how many first time to the gallery? Just curious. Oh, and a bunch of those too. Well, we want to do a special thank you to the Wasmer Art Gallery for hosting us. So a round of applause for them. It's a public gallery that opens from 10 to 4, and they open after hours for our events. But if you come in here every couple months, the exhibit changes, they move walls around, they paint things. I came in once, the whole room, like half was pink and half was blue. So it can be really shocking and some like really wonderful art. I especially love the student exhibit, which is at the end of the semester. And also a thank you to the Seidler Foundation, my co-producer in the Department of Language, Literature, and Creative Writing program, Lori Cornelius in the back. And especially to all of you. So a round of applause to yourselves for coming to Storytelling. One quick thing is if you have one of these in your pocket, to please put it on silent or vibrate or stun. Stun. If your neighbor falls over, you'll know what setting they put it on. If you need to walk out between classes, between stories or etiquette, just if you have to run to the bathroom or water, it's out there to the left and off to the right. But please try not to distract our storyteller or each other. And if Josh says something really exceptionally funny, what are you going to do? Oh, they're so good at this.
But don't fake it, please.
And one of those touching moments. Oh, that's great. Okay. You all are professionals already. I'm excited to have you here for storytelling. You're in for a treat. We have someone who is from the great tradition, keeping a folk tradition alive in this country. Someone who's learned it in the old way from like knee to knee, he's told me, from other folks carrying these songs and stories and ballads and just the music forward. So he is so many things, but he is a marvelous storyteller, an award-winning artist, and musician. You will find him on the circuit in many places, and I am so glad that he's come to us, because usually you have to travel to see him. Please welcome to the stage Josh Goforth.
Thanks, Joel. My name is Josh Goforth. I come to you from the hills of North Carolina, in western North Carolina. Do we have anybody here who has any roots in western North Carolina? Anybody from that area? Oh, in the back. Where are you from?
Arkansas now, but the family was in North Carolina before.
They were in North Carolina before. We're probably related. As we say in Madison County where I grew up, there ain't no family tree. It's just a wreath that goes around and around. I grew up hearing stories and singing old songs with my grandparents, and that's what I bring to you, some of the stories and songs from the Appalachian Mountains. And I'd love to start off with a song that you can help me sing from this guy right here, Mr. Ralph Stanley. Some of you may know Ralph Stanley, star of the Grand Ole Opry, also a wonderful bluegrass musician and singer. And Ralph was such a wonderful influence on me. And as a kid, I just idolized all of his songs because it made me think of all of my grandparents singing old songs. So I wanted to sing this song for you to begin with. It's got a part for you. Here's how it works. When I sing, "Honey Babe, I'm Bound to Ride," you just answer back, "Honey Babe, I'm Bound to Ride." And it does that about 3 times, okay? So here we go. Coming down from Tennessee, riding on the blind, I'm studying about my little darling, couldn't keep from crying. Honey babe, I'm bound to ride. That was very pleasant. It was very sweet. It was very church-like. It was like Presbyterians. I told the crowd yesterday, you sound like a bunch of Presbyterians. I did that joke in a Presbyterian church, and there was this sweet little old woman on the front row. She said, "That's why they call us the Frozen Chosen." So I know you can do better than that. Let's try it. Ready? Here we go. Honey babe, I'm bound to ride. Honey babe, I'm bound to ride. Honey babe, I'm bound to ride. Don't you want to go? Now I'm going to Atlanta just to look around. I'm eating those soda crackers, 10 cents a pound. Honey babe, I'm bound to ride. Honey babe, I'm bound to ride. Honey babe, I'm bound to ride. Oh, don't you want to go? Clap along. That was good. Now if I die, railroad man, bury me under the line so I can see old number 4. She goes rolling by. Honey, babe, I'm bound to ride. Honey, babe, I'm bound to ride. Honey, babe, I'm bound to ride. Don't you want to go? Give yourself a big hand. That was good singing, you guys. Well, there I was in Marshall, North Carolina, the county seat of Madison County, just north of Asheville. Y'all been to Asheville, some of y'all? Yeah, gotta love Asheville. There I was in my little hometown, and I went down to the Home Electric and Company. Now, the Home Electric and Company was right there where Main Street met Back Street. And I went in there, and the proprietor, Mr. Leonard Baker, now, he sold couches and lamps and old chairs and air conditioners and things like that, stuff you put in your house. But in the very back, he had a whole row of cheap instruments that he was selling. And I'd ride the school bus down there every single day, and I'd play those instruments. Now, I could play the guitar for Mr. Baker. I could play the mandolin. I'd play the banjo. I'd play the bass. And I was down there, and Mr. Baker said, "You know, son," he said, "I ain't never seen you play a fiddle." And I said, "Well, that's because I don't have one." He said, "You do now." And he gave me my very first fiddle. It was worth about $100. I went home, and I started trying to play it. It sounded like, as my granny would say, 2 groundhogs fighting in a sack. It was terrible. The worst thing I'd ever tried to play. I stuck it in the closet, and I didn't pull it out again for a year. Until I went to a jam session at a local pharmacy, and I heard 2 fiddle players, Gordon Freeman and Arthel Goforth, a distant relation of mine, began playing fiddle. Well, I went home, and I locked myself in the room until I could come out and play a tune. And so I just loved the fiddle. I fell in love with the fiddle. Now, I went off and started touring, but several years later, there was a fella who moved into our county. His name was Bobby Hicks. Now, Bobby was a great fiddle player. He started his career in the 1950s with Bill Monroe when he was 18 years old. He performed with Bill Monroe, the father of bluegrass music, and then quit that, began to work with country bands out in Las Vegas, and then he played with the country artist Ricky Skaggs for 23 years. He was, as Bill Monroe called him, the truest fiddle player that he had ever heard. He was king of the double stops. Now, a double stop is where you play 2 strings at the same time on fiddle and make them harmonize. Bobby is a legend. Everybody knows Bobby Hicks playing. He is a bluegrass legend. And Bobby, of course, passed away just a couple of years ago. And I want to tell you a quick story about Bobby, because Bobby was really good, and he knew it. If you want to know how good he was, all you had to do was ask him. He was that sort of guy. Well, he decided after he retired he wanted to move to a community that was secluded and where everybody knew everybody, and so he picked Madison County, and he picked Marshall. His first week in town, he goes to downtown Marshall to the Home Electric and Company. And he walked in the door, and there was Mr. Leonard Baker. And Bobby Hicks said, "Who's the best fiddle player in this county?" And Leonard Baker said, "Well, I don't know, but I guess it'd be Josh Goforth." Bobby said, "Not anymore." But we became really good friends, and Bobby, as I said, was the king of the double stops, and I want to play a couple of tunes that I learned from Bobby in tribute to him because he was such a special fiddle player. This is a special sort of sound that he created by playing an entire song pretty much in these double stops. So I'm going to start with a waltz I learned from Bobby called the Gardenia Waltz, and I'll follow it up with a fast tune that he taught me called The Fiddler's Dream. Here's the way he played. So now the reason you can only play two strings at the same time is because you see the bow is curved like this, like a U, and the bridge is curved in the opposite direction, sort of like a little heel. So even if you press down really hard, it's hard to get two strings, let alone three. I can press down really hard and get three strings, but it doesn't sound very good. But I grew up hearing harmony singing in church, four-part harmony from an early age. And so when I was about 15 years old, I tried to devise a way that I could get four-part harmony on the fiddle. Would you all like to see it? Here's how I figured out how to do it. Oh, that's tough to do. Well, growing up in Madison County, one of the things that was so special to me was getting to learn the ballads. Now, I grew up in a little community over there in Madison County called Sodom. That's a real place, just like in the Bible. There ain't no Gomorrah, just the Sodom. And what Sodom is most known for are the ballads. Now, a ballad is a story song, and these songs are hundreds of years old, passed down through the generations through the oral tradition. If you wanted to learn one of these ballads, these story songs, you would go to somebody's house and you would sit knee to knee with them. And they would sing the first verse, and you would sing that verse back. They'd sing the second verse, you'd sing both verses back. They'd sing the third, you'd sing all three back. And if you were learning a song like Lord Bateman, by the end of the song, they were singing one verse, and you were singing 96 verses. So you had to have a pretty amazing memory. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing Lord Bateman. Okay, so just not going to bore you with that. But I will sing one of the ballads that I learned from this lady right here. Inez Chandler. Check her out. Notice how she's holding that pocketbook, just in case there's a thief in her presence. She's got that locked down. Now, Inez was a woman who didn't have a filter between her brain and her mouth. You know somebody like that? She was always just saying whatever she thought. They called her Inez Double Barrel Chandler. Now, the reason they called her that was because she was a Chandler before she married, and she married a Chandler. So she was Inez Double Barrel Chandler. Remember the wreath? It just goes round and around. And I just love hearing stories about Inez. Inez, she would always get words wrong. You know, you might go to her house and she'd say, "Honey, do you want a cup of coffee?" All I got's that old decapitated kind. Or as you can tell by seeing her picture, she referred to herself as being big and stout. And she was. and she didn't have an inside voice. Now, my buddy David Holt, who I played with for 20 years, he told me this story. He said Inez went to the doctor, and they told her she's going to have to go on a diet. So David asked her, said, well, what does that involve? And she said, well, David, I've just decided to become a veterinarian. He said, well, what does that involve? She said, well, that's where you eat all vegetables and stay hydraulic. I'll tell you this one. This is my favorite story about Inez. Inez, her niece was getting married, and you had to beg Inez to go anywhere. She said, I ain't leaving this house. I'm stuck right here. I've got all the stuff I need right here. I ain't going nowhere. Well, they begged her all week long. Well, finally on Friday, she relented and said she'd go. She said, no, I don't like to go anywhere because you know how hard it is for me to get in and out of a car. But they got her into the car, and they took her to the wedding, and she watched the ceremony, and they went to the little party afterwards, and they come back to the house, and they was all sitting around, and they said, Inez, what'd you think about that wedding? She said, oh, it's all right, I guess. What I really enjoyed going to was the conception. I think that happens a little bit later. But she sung me many ballads, and I learned many ballads from Inez, and most of them I cannot sing in public because they are so bad. But I will sing you one that she used to sing all the time, and it's one of the funny ballads. And I'm going to sing it in the old style, the way these ballads were sung, without accompaniment, or as we call it over there in Madison County, acapulco. So, this one is called The Farmer's Cursed Wife. There was an old farmer lived over the hill. If he ain't done dead, he lives there still singing fi-fi, diddle-fi, diddle-la-diddle all day. Well, the devil stepped up to the man at the plow. He said, one of your family I'm a-taking right now, singing fi-fi, diddle-fi, diddle-la-diddle all day. Well, it ain't your son or your gal I crave, but your old scolding wife, and her I'll have, singing fi-fi, diddle-fi, diddle-la-diddle all day. Well, welcome, sweet Satan, from the bottom of my heart. I hope you and her'll never more part, singing fi-fi, diddle-fi, diddle-la-diddle all day. Well, he threw her in an old tow sack, and then he slung her across his back, singing fi-fi, diddle-fi, diddle-la-diddle all day. Well, they rode right up to the gates of hell, said, stoke up the fire, we'll roast her well, singing fi-fi, diddle-fi, diddle-la-diddle all day. Now there's 6 little demons a-setting at the wall. She grabbed up a poker and thrashed them all, singing fi-fi, diddle-fi, diddle-la-diddle all day. Then she grabbed old Satan by the hair of his head, said, I'd have done killed you if you weren't done dead, singing fi-fi, diddle-fi, diddle-la-diddle all day. So a little bitty demon with a ball and chain, she kicked up her leg and smashed his brain, singing fi-fi, diddle-fi, diddle-la-diddle all day. Well, the littlest demon stepped up and he said, you better take her back, Daddy, or we'll all be dead, singing fi-fi, diddle-fi, diddle-la-diddle all day. Well, the farmer seen him coming. He broke for a run, he broke for the house in a flat-out run, singing fi-fi, diddle-fi, diddle-la-diddle all day. The farmer stepped up and he peeked through the crack, said, oh, my Lord, he's bringing her back, singing fi-fi, diddle-fi, diddle-la-diddle all day. So the devil stepped up and he knocked on the door. Ain't never seen a woman like this before, singing fi-fi, diddle-fi, diddle-la-diddle all day. Well, here's your wife, and I hope she's well. I had to bring her back, or she'd have tore up hell, singing fi-fi, diddle-fi, diddle-la-diddle all day. Now, you know it'd take a woman as mean as sin to go down to hell and come back again, singing fi-fi, diddle-fi, diddle-la-diddle all day. Well, I've been the devil the most of my life, but I never been to hell till I met your wife, singing fi-fi, diddle-fi, diddle-la-diddle all day. Now, I want to tell you that I did learn that from Inez and Sheila K. Adams, but I learned that one verse that says, you know it'd take a woman as mean as sin to go down to hell and come back. I learned that from my grandpa. And I was on the porch stringing green beans with my grandmother. And she said, honey, sing that devil song. So I started singing it. Well, I got to that verse and I sung it. And she said, who did you learn that verse from? She said, I know you didn't learn it from Inez Chandler. Who did you hear that from? Don't you lie to me. Guarantee you heard that from your granddaddy, didn't you? And I said, yes, ma'am. She said, that ain't the way that verse goes. I said, well, how does it go? She said, the real words are, this proves that women are better than men because they can go to hell and come back again. So there you go. Well, I was such a wonderful fan of Mr. Doc Watson. Here's a picture of Doc right here. How many of you have never heard of Doc Watson? Raise your hand. It's okay to raise your hand. Yeah, most all of you have never heard of Doc Watson. Doc Watson was one of our most famous American folk musicians. He did so much to influence folk music, but not just folk music, rock and roll music. You can ask any major rock guitarist, from Dave Grohl to anybody you want to ask, and they will credit Doc as one of their influences. In fact, I had a conversation with Paul McCartney, who told me that Doc was a huge influence, and he loved his music so much. Doc was from Deep Gap, North Carolina, and Doc was a blind musician who would basically play any genre you could imagine. He would do rock and roll songs. He would do old-time music like I'm playing for you here. Just all kinds of stuff. But what he was known for was his flat picking, these old fiddle tunes that he would play with just a flat pick. Now, when I was a kid, I wanted to play just like Doc. And I had an album of Doc. And it was a live album. And before somebody would take a break, he'd say, pick it. Or he'd say, pick it, son. And I wanted to hear those words so bad as this little boy growing up in Madison County that I'd sit on the edge of my bed and I would play rhythm guitar and I would say, pick it, son, and then I'd play my little break. In 2002, at Merle Fest in Wilkesboro, North Carolina, I got to get on stage with Doc Watson, and I got to hear the words, pick it, son, so I can die a happy man. And so I want to play for you one of those tunes that we played that day. It's called the Black Mountain Rag. Thank you all so much. Oh, it makes you want to get up and dance, don't it? I want to play for you a tune that was special to me as a child. And it may be a tune that some of you know. Maybe not the students. Some of y'all know what this tune is? What is it? Freight Train. That's exactly right. This song, those of you who are students, when I was a kid, this song was in every elementary school songbook. We sung this when I was just a little kid in our choir. And when I was just starting on guitar, it was the hardest song I'd ever tried to learn because it's played in this style called thumb picking. And what you do is you get a thumb pick and you want to kind of create a little bass rhythm like this. And just like rubbing your belly and patting your head at the same time, you have to play the melody with your other fingers. I'll show you what it sounded like when I was a kid, just using one single string against that. You could sing. Freight train, going so fast. Freight train, going so fast. Please don't tell what train I'm on. They won't know what route I'm on. And I played that over and over and over and over and over and over and over until my mother said, "Go to the barn. If I have to hear that tune one more time, I'm going to scream." I'm like, "You already have." But I love that tune. And, I got to thinking about it. I had to practice so much to get to where I'm at. When I got my first guitar, as I said, I practiced 5 hours every day. I would come home from school, I'd do my homework, and I would play until I fell asleep. My mother told me there was many nights she would come in my room and she would pry the guitar from my arms while I was snoring. I was eat up with it, as we'd say. Right, Lori? Eat up with it. That means I loved it. I wanted to learn everything I could about music. And I practiced and I practiced and I practiced. And I just wanted everything there was about music. I started learning jazz. I started learning rock and roll. And I started learning heavy metal. And I started learning just every instrument I could possibly play. I got into wind instruments. I was eat up with music. And I practiced 5 hours every single day from the time I was in middle school until I got to college. And all of you college students, when you get to college that first week, it might be the first time you've ever been away from mama. And you do a lot of things that aren't that wonderful when you're away from mama. And when I got to college, I figured, well, I've practiced, and I'm here on a music scholarship, and I can just sort of sit back and enjoy, and I started partying and doing everything that you usually do when you're in college. And I sort of got out of practicing that much every day until I went to Dr. Benjamin D. Caton III's oral skills class. Dr. Caton was one of the music professors there. Now, oral skills is ear training. Dr. Caton went to East Tennessee State University. He had taught there since 1972. He was in his late 60s, early 70s, still lived with his mother, who was in her 90s. He had never been married. Grew up in a little mountain community of Newport, Tennessee, in the Appalachian Mountains, just like me, but studied in Hungary for 6 years. So Dr. Caton had this weird Hungarian mountain accent. And he would end every sentence, this is why your story made me think of this today, he'd end every sentence with the word, yes. Like he would say, "Mr. Goforth, there ain't no 6 and a 5 chord. Yes." That's the way he talked. Every day, from the time that I was a freshman until I was a senior, he would come into the room and say the same thing. Dr. Caton would come in his 1950s professor suit, that he would bring his whole stack of books and he would slam them on top of the piano and he'd say, "Hello and welcome to Mathis, room 211. I will be your instructor today, Dr. Benjamin D. Caton III. Yes." I mean, this was like year 4. We had had him for 4 years. We knew who he was. "I will be your oral skills instructor today. Yes, I will begin by calling the roll. Josh Goforth is here today. Kelly Scollin is here today. Mike Palmer, Not quite time for him today. And now Miss Rebecca Prophet. Is Miss Prophet here today? Yes. Her roommate raises her hand. Now, the room was set up so that there were these keyboards, and there was a computer screen. And everybody would sort of hide behind those computer screens because Dr. Caton was the kind of teacher who knew when you didn't have one of your problems done on your homework. You ever have a teacher like that? You could do every problem on your homework, and he knew the one that you didn't do, and he would look for a victim. He would look at your eyes. And so everybody was trying to hide behind those monitors. Well, he called out Rebecca Prophet's name, and Rebecca Prophet's roommate peered around that monitor. And she said, Dr. Caton, she's my roommate, and when I left the room, she was still in bed. Is that so? Yes. Well, we'll just see about that. Dr. Caton runs out to the hallway. There's a phone that's hanging on the wall there with a phone book that has all the numbers. Now, younger people, a phone book is where... No, we don't have those anymore. But he's rifled through and he found Miss Rebecca Prophet's number and he dialed her on that phone. And he said, hello, Miss Prophet, is this you? And you could hear, yes. Miss Prophet, where are you at? We're in room 211, Mathis Hall. It is past time. Miss Prophet, to be on time is to be early is to be on time. To be on time is to be left. And to be left is to be late. And the train has left the station. Yes. And he hung up the phone. That was Dr. Caton. Dr. Caton would then proceed to call on each of us to perform for him something from the homework. He started with me. He said, Mr. Goforth, yes, why don't you please sing the harmonic minor scale, yes, in solfege. So I began, la, ti, do, re, mi, fi, fa, si, la, si, fa, mi, re, do, ti, la. Mr. Goforth, what did you think of your performance? Yes. I said, well, I thought it was close. Mr. Goforth, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, yes. And then he moved on. Mr. Scotland, why don't you perform for us, if you would, please? Example number 1, yes. Well, Dr. Caton, I just looked at it, and I just didn't really even try it because I didn't even know what to do. It was at that moment that we were in for a Dr. Caton story, one of his most famous stories. And here's what he told Mr. Kelly Scotland. Mr. Scotland, there were 2 little frogs, yes. And these 2 little frogs were brothers, and they had telepathy. And they never had to ribbit, nor croak, nor nothing, yes. They could talk to each other through their little froggy brains. And one day, these 2 little brother frogs started hippity-hop, all across a little plank. And both of them tragically, oh dear, fell into separate vats of milk, yes. And it was so deep, that milk, that the one little frog said in his little froggy brain to his brother, oh, I'm just going to lay here at the bottom of this vat and die. I'll never get out. And his other little froggy brother answered him through his mind and said, no, I'm going to hop and hop and hop. I know I'll never get out, but I will try. And the little frog who hopped made butter and hopped right out. That's what you must do, Mr. Scotland. You must make butter, yes. Mr. Palmer, why don't you do example 1? Well, Dr. Caton, I didn't do any of the homework. I was up late last night doing other work, and I just don't know. I can't really get any of this. Honestly, it's just too hard. Mr. Palmer, I have a dog, yes. His name is Clover. And little Clover is a terrier mix, yes. He's got a really long body and itty-bitty, teeny-tiny little legs. He has the most can-do attitude and the most can't-do body I've ever seen. And every day, I take Clover to the park where he walks, yes. And we go walking, and all of a sudden, there's a little bunny rabbit, yes, that hops out from a bush. It happens every single day, yes. And that little bunny starts to hop. And Clover gives chase, yes. And he chases that little bunny around and around and around. And the bunny has little quick legs and he can make turns. And poor Clover with his long body can't make the turns. But he tries and he tries and he tries. He knows he'll never catch him, but he still tries. I am the bunny. And you are Clover, Mr. Palmer. Catch me if you can. Dr. Caton was a special teacher. He would end every class with the same line. Yes, that has been Oral Skills 2, Week 3, Lesson 5. Yes, I've been your instructor, Dr. Benjamin D. Caton III, here in Mathis Music Hall, room 211. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, only you can prevent forest fires, yes. It was at that moment when I first stepped into Dr. Caton's class and stepped out that I realized that I had to practice. I had to get back to what I was doing when I was in middle school. And I came back to that song. And I remember how hard it was to practice that and how I played it over and over and over. See, that song was written by Elizabeth Cotton. Elizabeth Cotton was an African-American lady who was born in the 1890s. She had to quit school when she was 9 years old because she needed to make money to help her family out. And so she took all these little odd jobs. And she saw this guitar in a window, and she wanted it because she loved music. And she saved up enough money from her work to buy herself a guitar. And she taught herself to play. It was a right-handed guitar, and she was left-handed. So she played it upside down and backwards. And she wrote the song Freight Train when she was 14 years old. She practiced hard. She talks about how hard she worked on that to get it just right. Well, eventually, she got older and she got married and she had a child. And she decided she had to just put down the guitar. She didn't have time for it. The only thing she would do is sing in church sometimes. And she raised her daughter, and she never played a bit of guitar for 25 years. Once her daughter was grown up, her and her husband just couldn't get along, so they got a divorce, and she decided to move in with her daughter who lived in Washington, D.C. And she took a job at a department store. And one day there was a little girl who came up to her, and the little girl was lost. And she couldn't find her mother, and she was crying. And Elizabeth said, "Oh, honey, don't worry. I'll help you find your mama. You just come with me." Well, they found the girl's little mother. And the little girl was so happy and hugged her mom, and the mom was so appreciative. She says, "You know, we've been really looking for a positive influence to come in and just help us with the kids, you know, during the day and after school. Would that be something that would interest you? We'd be happy to pay you, you know, whatever you're making here." And Elizabeth said, "Oh, I would love that." Well, when she got to their house, she looked on the walls. And on every wall, it was covered in instruments. There were guitars and banjos and fiddles and all kinds of things and pianos. And during the day when all the kids were at school, Elizabeth took down the guitar and she retaught herself how to play. One day Elizabeth was playing that song Freight Train when the older brother of that little girl came home, and he was just dumbfounded. He couldn't believe it. He said, "I didn't know you play. You have to show me how you do that." And he sat there and he began having Elizabeth teach him how to play that song. What I didn't tell you is that little girl who got lost there in that department store was none other than Peggy Seeger, the sister to Pete Seeger, the great folk musician. And the brother who came home from high school was Pete Seeger. Elizabeth was in the right place at the right time. And Elizabeth showed them all these guitar things. Pete Seeger's brother Mike began recording Elizabeth and put out an album of these traditional guitar tunes. I don't know if we have another battery or microphone, but this is starting to go bad. Maybe I'll have to just talk really loud. But Elizabeth began to teach them these songs and record these songs, and that album went on to sell thousands and thousands of copies. We'll see if this one's any better. It is a little better. It went on to sell thousands and thousands of copies. Elizabeth Cotton became famous worldwide. She was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame just a couple of years back. And she bought a house in New York and lived out the rest of her life playing guitar and being a legend of the guitar. I remember sitting in Dr. Caton's office. I was his office assistant. And Dr. Caton was he was looking online at football scores. And Dr. Caton was obsessed with college football. He said, "Mr. Goforth, yes, do you know what Peyton Manning's passing percentage was this week?" I said, "No, Dr. Caton, it was quite high, yes." He said, "Mr. Goforth, what do you want to do with your life?" "Yes." I said, well, if I'm lucky enough, I'd love to be able, this one needs it too. He said, I would love to be able, I said, if I'm lucky enough, I would love to get on stage and play for people. He said, Mr. Goforth, what is that word you just used right there? That word. I said, I don't play? No, Mr. Goforth, that other terrible word. I said, luck? Yes, Mr. Goforth, luck. He said, Mr. Goforth, there's no such thing as luck, yes. Luck, Mr. Goforth, is where opportunity meets preparation. I thought about Elizabeth Cotton and that chance encounter in a department store with a lost child. And Elizabeth Cotton had practiced all that time. She was ready for the opportunity. And because she was ready, it influenced me. And because I practiced that way when I was a kid and came to realize that luck was where opportunity meets preparation, that's the reason that I'm playing for you right now. Now when I die, won't you bury me deep, way down on Old Chestnut Street, so I can watch old number 9 as she goes riding by. Sing it with me, ready? Freight train, going so fast. Freight train, going so fast. Please don't tell what train I'm on. They won't know which route I'm on. I want to show you the oldest instrument maybe in the world, the oldest string instrument in the world. Here it is, just a stick with a string nailed to it. We call this over in the mountains of western North Carolina and East Tennessee a mouth bow. Now, some anthropologists believe that the mouth bow was actually used as a musical instrument before it was ever used to hunt with, which I think is pretty spectacular news. And it's sort of a weird instrument. Let me show you the guy who played it over in Madison County. I love this photo. Get ready. This is Morris Norton. Look at that face. Morris was an ornery old feller. He played the banjo, but he would never show you the banjo because he was afraid you would steal his licks. In fact, if he played for you, he'd put a handkerchief over his left hand so you couldn't see what it was doing. Now, he played two instruments. He played the mouth bow and the paper bag, believe it or not, which makes a great rhythm instrument. Now, this particular mouth bow that I'm playing is made by a guy named Carlick Stooksbury from over in Tennessee, and I got it from my good buddy David Holt. Carlick was a great maker of these, and he said that in order to make a good one, you had to cut the wood in the dead of winter when snow was on the ground at midnight, when the moon was full on the north side of the tree. And he said that's the way you make a good tone. So I'd actually like to sing for you a song that, actually, let me do the one I did yesterday. I was going to do a different one, but let me do the one I did yesterday because I think it showcases the mouth bow so much better. This is a tune that I learned from Morris called Cripple Creek, which is a really old-time tune. Actually, let me get back down here so you can see me on the video. I'll just move these out of the way. Now, what you do is you put this up to your mouth, okay? You don't put it in your mouth. You put it up next to your cheek, okay? And just like a guitar or banjo, the guitar has a box that the sound resonates in, and your mouth becomes like the guitar box. You sort of move your tongue around a little bit and change the shape of your mouth, and you can get a different sound, like, can you hear that? So let me play this old tune called Cripple Creek for you. Well, I got a gal at the head of the creek. Well, I go down and see her about 2 times a week. Kiss from her lips, sweet as any wine. Wrap yourself around like a sweet teddy vine. Going up Cripple Creek, going on a run. Going up Cripple Creek to have a little fun. Going up Cripple Creek, going in a whirl. Going up Cripple Creek to see my girl. Well, the girls up Cripple Creek about half grown. Jump on a boy like a dog on a bone. Gonna roll my britches up to my knees. Wait, old Cripple Creek, never I please. Going up Cripple Creek, going on a run. Going up Cripple Creek to have a little fun. Going up Cripple Creek, going in a whirl. Going up Cripple Creek to see my girl. Now, oh me, oh my, gonna wait old Cripple Creek till I die. Oh me, oh my, gonna wait old Cripple Creek till I die. A little bit of Cripple Creek. Got time for a quick story and one more. You all have been a fabulous audience, and I especially want to thank the students today from Joel's class. I've so enjoyed getting to talk with you and meet you and hear you tell things about your stories. It's been a real honor, and thank you all from the community for coming as well. I hope you've enjoyed something that I've done. When I was a kid, I got to know 6 of my great-grandparents, 6 of them, all born in the 1890s. And I loved going to their houses because they would just tell us old stories. And they were characters, you know, like I remember hearing my Paul Baker talk about the time that when he was a little boy on a dare, he rode across the Pigeon River on a sow hog when he was 5 years old. Can you imagine that? 5 years old riding across the Pigeon River on a sow hog. I said, Paul, wasn't you scared? He said, I wasn't scared, not one bit. He said, I'd watch Mommy wash enough dishes to know that grease floats on water. Or, you know, watching my great-grandmother, after she started living with some of her kids, you know, they had a TV in the house. And she watched TV really for the first time, you know, and her 2 favorite programs were The Price is Right and wrestling. She loved watching wrestling. And my grandmother, she chewed a combination of Kentucky Twist tobacco mixed with dental snuff. And she had a little Greer applesauce can that she'd spit in, her tobacco juice. And when those wrestlers would start wrestling, she'd spit harder and harder. And she'd just yell at the screen. You know, she'd even, on Sunday, if one of them got hurt, she'd ask prayer for them. That's how much she was in to wrestling. Or getting to know Granny Et. Granny Et was the strongest woman I ever knew. Granny Et told me, you know, she was actually a snake dealer. Y'all ever heard of that? A snake dealer is someone who catches copperheads and rattlesnakes. That one's still going bad. I don't know what's going on. And sells them to snake handling churches. So she would catch live copperheads and rattlesnakes and sell them to snake handling churches. So some of y'all are like, what is a snake handling church? Well, it's this thing from the Bible where it says in the Bible, if you take up serpents, if your faith is strong enough, you will not be hurt. So these people lift up snakes and kind of jump around the church with them and kind of look in their eyes and, you know, just jump around and speak in tongues. And in fact, when I was a kid, there was this guy in Marshall who went down there, a preacher. He drank a whole little jar of strychnine. snake poison, died right there. So I guess his faith wasn't strong enough. But that was one of her odd jobs, was to collect snakes. She told me about the time when she was a little girl. She said that she never had a baby doll. She said, "Oh, honey, I wanted a baby doll so bad." She said, we'd go down to Marshall, and she said, why, they'd have them old, they'd have the baby dolls in the windows, and I wanted one so bad. She said all we had was them old corn husk dolls, that you make out of corn husk, use the silk for hair. She said, but I wanted a real baby doll, honey. Well, when she got old enough to have kids of her own, and they got old enough to have children, and those grandchildren had children, we started buying her baby dolls for Christmas. It was a big thing. Everybody would buy her baby dolls. Now, she lived in this little itty-bitty cabin with sort of slat wooden floors, and some of it was dirt. And she didn't have electricity. She just had an old oil lamp that she had there on the top of the mantelpiece above the fireplace. And she nailed those baby dolls to the wall of that cabin. There were hundreds of them. And when I was a kid, you'd go in there and it would be dark with the oil lamp burning. And those baby dolls with one eye open, one eye shut, just looking down at you. And my great-grandmother in a rocking chair with the most wrinkled face ever, with a black snake crawling across the floor, her pet black snake that she kept, just sitting in that rocking chair laughing. Scared me to death. I'm not making this up. This is true. But so it wasn't a big surprise that she got Alzheimer's, and we had to place her in a nursing facility because we just couldn't give her the care that she needed. And the local nursing home was great because, they were all family, everybody's related, So they took really good care of her. Well, the first day she was there, it wasn't surprising that she escaped. She convinced someone that she was there to see her sister and her son hadn't come to pick her up, so she got a ride down to Marshall. Well, they found her and brought her back up to the nursing home. A week later, she escaped again. She hitchhiked from Marshall, North Carolina to Newport, Tennessee. Now, that is an hour and a half away by car. She hitchhiked there. And the only reason that she was caught is because my great uncle, her son, I love his name, by the way. His name was Flirty. Isn't that good? Flirty? Isn't that a good name? Flirty was driving in Newport. He was going over there. He raised tobacco, and he was over there to sell his tobacco. And he was driving along, and he looked, and he said, "Lord, there's Mama." He picked her up. She got in the car. She had on a long black jacket. She had $800 stuffed in one pocket, and she had a long snouted pistol in the other one. She was some kind of woman. And I always say one of the biggest technological advancements they ever hit Madison County was when they started putting the magnetic bracelets on the residents there at the nursing home, and that's all thanks to my great-grandmother, Et. She was a character. The person who I would really love to have met, though, was my great-grandfather, Asbury. They say he was a great fiddle player. My grandmother used to tell me, she said, "Honey," she said, "your grandpap, he was an amazing fiddle player. He had a pet crow that could talk. And it would sit on his shoulder, and it would talk just like you and me is a-talking right now. And he'd play that fiddle, and that crow would sing." I said, "Well, what songs would he play and him sing?" She said, "Well, he'd play Sally Gooden." I said, "Well, how's that go?" And Papa said, "I know that song." Now, my Papa, let me show you a picture of him. Here's his picture. Check out that glob of tobacco. My granddad was the biggest character I knew. I love to go around there and hear him tell those stories. He told me about the time him and my grandmother were preparing to be married, how he asked her to marry me. He said, "Have I ever told you about the time I asked for your grandma to marry me?" I said, "No." I said, "Did you get down on one knee and give her a ring and pop the question?" "That ain't the way I asked grandma to marry me. But I did ask her an important question." I said, "Well, how did you ask her to marry you?" He said, "I asked her, 'Do you want to be buried with my people?'" That is love. But Papa, he chimed up and he said, "I know that old song.
He said, we used to sing it when I was a little boy. Here's how it goes. Bake a little pie, bake a little pudding, give it all away for love salad good. He said, you ought to learn how to fiddle like your grandpap. And so I did. So I want to close out my set with that tune, Sally Gooden. Thank you all so much for coming. We're going to have a question and answer session right afterwards, so stick around, okay? Hope you've enjoyed it. I'll play it sort of the tempo that he sang it at, then I might speed it up a little bit, so you might not want to clap. It gets going a little too fast for me. So here's the way he would sing it. Here we go. Bake a little pie, bake a little pudding, give it all the way for the love of Sally Gooden. Bake pie, bake a little pudding, give it all the way for the love of Sally Gooden. Thank you all very much.
Questions? Oh, gosh. Well,
Is that an antique banjo?
Yes, so this banjo is really special to me. I actually just got it this last year. I got it from David Holt, who was, of course, my mentor. David Holt's a 4-time Grammy-winning artist. We got a Grammy nomination together. And David played the Grand Ole Opry. He traveled all around the world. He's one of our biggest proponents of old-time music. This banjo was actually built in 1990 by a man named Bart Ryder from Lansing, Michigan. The neck is designed after an 1895 banjo model, which was the most expensive one you could buy at that time. Now, the great thing is it's got all that inlay work, but check out, it's got carving on the back, more inlay work, a really cool internal resonator system, and this is a one-of-a-kind banjo. After Bart built it, he said he would never build another like this because it was so difficult to build. It took him a year. And so luckily, I was helping David Holt clean out his basement, and he gave me a whole bunch of instruments. And I said, I saw that banjo, and I said, I'd never seen it before. And I said, I know you could never give that to me. I'm like, but I'd love to buy it. He's like, you don't have enough money to buy it. And I said, well, how much would you want? And he said, well, how much could you give me? And I gave him a price, and he said, I want you to have it for that. So that's the story of the banjo. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Yeah.
When David Holt loved his music and loved to travel, he appeared on one of his favorite TV shows on PBS called Great Scenic Railway Journeys, where he rode on trains, and it's about going down railroad trains, and on railroad trains and so much more.
That is exactly right. That is who David Holt is. That's awesome. Yeah, David did that program for several years, went around to different scenic railway trips, and actually I recorded on one of those episodes, and David also had another program called Folkways, which showcased folk art and folk music. He really took what we do in the mountains and made it serious so that people looked at it and could see the beauty in it and not automatically go to the stereotype. And so he really changed our music in that way. And yes, I love that program. I'd encourage you to check it out. Great Scenic American Railways. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite tune or song or whatever piece of music from your specific hometown?
Oh, that's a good question. So there's a lot of different. It's so difficult. There's so many good ones. I mean, obviously, some of the ballads that I learned when I was a kid, I'm really fond of. I remember the first ballad that I ever learned, which still to me to this day is I'm very fond of. It's called "Four Nights Drunk," and I learned it when I was like 10 years old. Now, I want to tell you that this is the first song I ever sang on stage. And when I was a kid, I grew up sort of my mom's family. They were staunch Baptists. And it was all about religious music. I could play I'll Fly Away on guitar, and my grandmother thought that was the greatest thing ever. So they called me at the Asheville Mountain Dance and Folk Festival, the very first folk festival ever in existence. Huge show. Like 1,500 people were going to be there. I'd never been on stage like that before in my life. They called me, wanted me to play on stage. My grandmother says, "Honey, you ought to play I'll Fly Away." Now, you know that one, and it's good, and you play that real well, and you ought to do that song because you ought to give glory where it's, due. So I thought I'd play I'll Fly Away. Well, I'd been going over to Sodom, to some of my dad's family, and I've been learning some of these ballads. And I don't know, there they are on the front row, 1,500 people. There was my mom, my grandmother, my sister, all had their popcorn and all had the, Coca-Colas. And they thought their little baby sweetheart Baptist boy was going to play I'll Fly Away. And I was going to, but I don't know what come over me. I decided I wanted to do that other song. And so I get up on stage, and the first words I hit at age 10 or 11, my voice hadn't even changed. And I sang, "I come home the other night as drunk as I could be." And I don't know if you've ever seen anybody rocket Coca-Cola out their nose, but my grandmother did. "I come home the other night as drunk as I could be, and I saw a horse standing in the stable where my horse ought to be. Well, come here, my little wife, explain this thing to me. Now, why is there a horse in the stable where my horse ought to be? Well, you blind fool, you drunken old fool, now can't you plainly see? Well, that's only a milk cow your granny sent to me. Well, I've traveled this whole world over at least 100 times or more, but a saddle on a milk cow I ain't never seen before. I come home the other night as drunk as I could be, and I saw a pair of pants laying on the floor where my pants ought to be." This is where my mother choked on her popcorn kernel. "Come here, my little wife, explain this thing to me. Now, why is there a pair of pants where my pants ought to be? Well, you blind fool, you drunken old fool, now can't you plainly see? Well, that's only a flour sack your granny sent to me. Well, I've traveled this whole world over at least 100 times or more, but a zipper on a flour sack I ain't never seen before. I come home the other night as drunk as I could be, and I saw a head a-laying on the pillow where my head ought to be. Come here, my little wife, explain this thing to me. Now, why is there a head on the pillow where my head ought to be? Well, you blind fool, you drunken old fool, now can't you plainly see? Well, that's only a cabbage head your granny sent to me. Well, I've traveled this whole world over at least 100 times or more, but a mustache on a cabbage head I ain't never seen before." Now, there are a lot more verses to that song, but I definitely cannot sing them in public. You can only imagine where it goes from there. So that's a song that I just am very fond of because it was one of my first. So.
So prior to college, you pretty much were self-taught when you were when you were a young guy?
Yes. Yeah, I was self-taught. So those of you, how many musicians do we have in the audience? We got several of you. Anyone ever heard of the pentatonic scale? Yeah, many of you have heard the pentatonic scale. So when I was a kid, because I'd sang so much harmony with my grandfather at age 3 or 4, I just sat down at a piano and I could play. I can't describe it to you. I could just automatically understood the way it worked. And it's interesting because I've taught 2 other students in my life who sort of have the same love and zeal for music that I do. And we all have 2 things in common. We all sang when we were in church at an early age, and we all started on piano in the key of F sharp. And the reason we started in that key, because that's all the black keys on the piano. And the black keys on the piano are the pentatonic scale, which is the most used scale in all of music. Most of our melodies are made up of just the pentatonic scale. So that I was self-taught on that. Now, later on, I go to jam sessions and, pretty much didn't have any musical instruction until I got to middle school and started playing in the school bands. But as I think I told someone else a little earlier, I just wanted all that was music. And I was so deeply, deeply in love with the idea of learning music that I just learned every instrument I could. I learned every style I could. When I was in high school, I think I mentioned that my band director had a heart attack. And for the last 2 years of my high school career, I did my music work on the side, and the principal wanted me to teach all the music classes. So I taught myself orchestration and conducting and marching band drill writing. And so the last 2 years of high school, I was the band director. So, yeah, I don't know, a special case. Who knows? Just wanted it. Just wanted it. I think talent, a lot of it is what you're brought up with. At a very early age, the kind of musical experience you have at an early age that's rooted, that's like 5%. The other 95 is literal work. It's 5 and 6 hours a day.
I was curious about how and when storytelling became a part of your music practice.
That's a really good question as well. I've been playing in different bands, pretty much from the time I was a teenager. And was never interested in really talking on stage that much. But I began to when I started playing with David Holt, I began talking on stage a little bit. And he said, you come from such a long line of great storytellers. You could just take those stories you tell and just beef them up a little bit, and you could totally do storytelling. I'm like, what do you mean a long line of great storytellers? He said, Josh, I know you sat on people's front porches and heard them talk in Madison County. I was like, don't I ever? Because I remember as a kid, I would go to somebody's house to learn a fiddle tune from them, and they would talk for like 20 minutes. And I was like, please shut up and just teach me the tune. And then they'd play the tune. Then they'd finish that up. They'd talk for another 20 minutes. Just crazy stories, just any kind of, story you could imagine. And I realized that was the model, the front porch. We're all sitting here together. I just tell a story. We play a couple songs, tell another story. We play a couple songs. And the model was already there. So that's really the way I got into storytelling, was to realize that was everything. That was the cultural foundation for my entire childhood, was sitting on people's front porches and hearing music and hearing them tell stories. So, how I could never dream that I'd be doing that for money. So, thank you. Any other questions? All right. I think we're good. Thank you all again. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming and supporting storytelling. We'll have more events on the calendar as well. And if you could help us as you're going out to put away the chairs as well. But another round of applause. There's special guest, Josh Goforth.
And by the way, if you can check out my schedule at joshgoforth.com is my schedule. And I want to also tell you all that in 2 months, hopefully by April, fingers crossed by April, maybe May, I have a brand new album coming out with 10 original songs and 3 covers. It is everything from old-time banjo to me playing piano, singing with a string quartet. So that'll be out in a couple of months. So please check out Spotify, Apple, however you consume music. Okay?